We've got a big new project in the shop. Well, it's actually behind me outside the shop. Earlier this year, my daughter wanted a C5 Corvette, so she bought a Vert. It is a stick shift, but it's got one problem. Right now, it's only a 4-speed. 5th and 6th are out of it. It just doesn't feel very good in any of the other gears. So what we're going to be doing is pulling the transmission out. We'll be pulling the whole driveline out, and I'll be rebuilding the T56 in. So I'm going to show you guys in the first part of this video how you can pull the driveline out of one of these without having to lift. You can do it in your driveway, do it in your garage. It's not that hard to do. You do need a few special tools, jacks and jack stands, but lift is not required, and I'm not sure that I'd even want to lift. So we'll get with it. I'll show you what you need to get and show you how to take it out. What you need is a couple floor jacks, one big, one small. The big one, and these all came from Harbor Freight. One big one, you've got the option for this T-bar assembly that bolts onto it, and it's also got a couple of slide out pieces on the end, but I just use it flat. That fits under the cross members of the Vette really nice, and then it'll fit under the, well, you'll be dropping the cross member in the back, so when you lower everything down, it'll work. The small one, jack it up to get the big jack under it, and then you'll need 4 jack stands. I've got 2 big ones, 2 smaller ones, and I've modified all these to where you can put a puck on the top. These are just well, there we go. These are just drilled and screwed into the top. The other ones I welded some little plates to go on the top, but the jacks will be in your 4 puck locations when it's setting there and you're working on it. So that's what you need to have to be able to do this, which is considerably cheaper than a lift. Before you ever lift it off the ground, you need to go in and take off the negative battery cable. Okay, before you go any further, you need to take out a few things on the inside. You need to pop the center console out, screw here, take that out. The shifter knob will come off if you have one of these C6 style. If you got the original C5 there, you pop the gear indicator off, and then there's a wedge in there that you have to pry out to get that off. There's a couple of screws back in here, one there, one there. There's a little cover here that's missing, and a screw in there that's missing. Screws there are missing. Yeah, this car needs some love. And then back here, 2 10mm nuts. They usually have little covers on there, which are missing. And you pop your little traction control deal up. Wire clip there that you pop loose. You'll have to undo your cigarette lighter there. 2 more 10mm nuts there, and there'll be a wire here for your trunk release. Take off, and then you should be able to pop this loose, bring it back up over the shifter. You have to reach behind and undo the clip for the cigarette lighter there, and then you should be able to take it out. Got that thing out. Not real sure what those 2 aftermarket switches, I think they're aftermarket. At least my Z06 doesn't have them. And they're all spliced in there like shit. Everything's sticky. This car needs a lot of love. But never mind that. I got these 4 nuts on this boot. We'll get the shifter boot off. This has got some kind of short throw shifter that she doesn't like. So we're going to try to find a stock shifter while we've got this apart. But we got to get this down in there, get to the shifter box. Get all that out of the way so the whole torque tube and everything can slide back, because that shifter box is mounted to the torque tube. Okay, you got 3 bolts here. These 2 here that mount the box onto the torque tube, and you've got a bolt here that mounts the shifter to the rod. Take those 3 out, and you should be able to, yeah. See, it came out of the shifter. Now this should work its way up out of the hole. And that is, I think, all we've got to do inside. And this is a nice shifter. It's an MGW. It's not some kind of Chinese job, but I've drove it. I really prefer the stock length shifter. I do like the C6 knob on it better, but I'm glad she had this. That way I don't end up buying one of these. But she should be able to, if I can find her a stock one, she should be able to sell this pretty easy. But now we'll jack the car up. Hey, one thing about jacking these up. See, she's got the aftermarket Borla exhaust catback on it. She's got headers and she's got a complete exhaust system. But the catback system is the Borla, and they have, like most of the other ones, they have an extra joint that allows you to pivot the muffler assembly separate of the pipe that goes over the axle. So we can go ahead and jack this car up to full height all the way around and still take the exhaust off. If you have factory exhaust, like I'm running the factory titanium on my Z, it is built in one piece, the muffler assembly and the over the axle part. So if you have a stock exhaust, you need to jack the ass end of the car up as high as you can get it. Before you do anything else, take the sway bar off the back, and then you should be able to pivot the exhaust around and get it out without too much trouble. And then you can lower the back end back down and jack it up like I'm going to show you now. But if you got stock, you got to get the exhaust off first, because if it's not face down, ass up, you'll have a hard time getting that exhaust out. Well, I don't know that you can get it out in one piece. So since these cars are way too low to get that jack under there by itself, you can either run it up on ramps, blocks, or whatever. What I normally do is take the small jack, use a puck, and just jack up one side. And that gives me plenty of room to get the main jack under the front, and then it'll all straighten itself up. Okay, now you've got plenty of room to get that under there. It's a little crooked now. And I go under that second part of the cradle, and I'll go let the little jack down so it'll set on this straight, and then we'll just jack the front end up high enough to put the stands under it. There, the car's up in the air now. We'll get the stands under it, under the front. Then we'll jack the back up. The back will end up a little higher than the front. We'll be ready to crawl under it and start taking stuff off. Now, come around the back. You should have plenty of room. Get the big jack centered nicely underneath your rear cross member. Start jacking that up. Keep an eye on your front jack stands and make sure your jack moves forward as that raises up and doesn't try to pull the jack stands over. Just got to go slow and pay attention. All right, car is nicely supported. Their jack stands and the pucks. Got plenty of room to work underneath. First things first, now they take the exhaust off, probably take the wheels off. Then we'll get the exhaust. All right, we're under the car now, got the tires out of the way. This is the pivot flange I was telling you that you don't have on the stock exhaust. So we'll loosen this up so this can rotate. And then we'll go up and take the 2-bolt clamps loose on each side, and we should be able to slide these hangers back and get the axle back part of the exhaust off. You basically end up folding that exhaust up like a pretzel, but as you rotate that around, you can work that pipe out of above the axle. So that extra joint does come in handy. I'm going to go ahead and continue taking the exhaust off. So on this X pipe, we have 2 hanger bolts there, and we have some band clamps, more band clamps, oxygen sensors up there, which those are the secondary ones. They will probably get deleted before we put this back together. Then we'll disconnect the catalytic converters, and that will have the back half of the exhaust off. Then we'll just have to go in the engine bay and take off the headers, because unfortunately you do have to take those off to get to the bell housing. Okay, all the lower exhaust is off. So right now I pulled the little cover off. I'm going to pull the spark plug wires. Get them out of the way. This right here is air injection. That's all gonna go bye-bye, so I'll just disconnect it to get out of the way, and then all this fitting and goes around to the other side. It'll come off and won't go back on. Then we'll be able to just unbolt the headers and should be able to take those out. Finally, got this header pipe out. I'm telling you, the worst part of this whole job is the exhaust, because you do have to take the headers off to get to the bell housing, because they wrap right around the bottom of it. This one, it came out the bottom. I ended up having to disconnect the steering linkage, but just pull your spark plugs, undo your coil wires. One thing I noticed on these older ones, they don't have a bracket for the coil pack. Each coil is just bolted right to the valve cover, so I had to move those. But this fitting here, that's the air injection fitting. I intend to cut that off, weld that shut, because we're not using that anymore. So I'm gonna quit for right now. Got a couple hours involved in it so far. Get the other header off tomorrow, and then we can actually drop the drivetrain. Okay, just finished pulling the other header out. Like the first one, you just take the spark plugs out. I removed the coil packs on this passenger side and was able to pull the header up through the top. It's just whatever you got to do to get it out of there. That opens up the area around your bell housing. So next step is to take out all these little bolts in that tunnel plate. And if you got a little electric impact, that's pretty easy. Well, I said that was going to be easy to get off. I only broke off 4 bolts, so I consider that a win. 4 of them that are back here in this enclosed section. As you can see, I don't think this piece of string is factory. I think we had a mouse in here at one point. Yeah, this vet has not been well cared for. Next on the to-do list, we're going to take off this lower bell housing. Got 2 bolts there where that wrench is hanging, then you've got some 10mm headed bolts going up into the other part of the bell housing. So we'll get that now out of the way. When we pull this out, we'll separate it right here. We'll take these bolts out, and this will come out. The actual upper bell housing will stay on the motor. So I'm gonna pull that off right now. And there's the cover off, piece of cake. As expected, looks like a stock clutch. Nothing's been touched in here, so all that'll get replaced. So now I'm going to move to the back and start disconnecting everything along the cradle that fastens to the car, so we can lower that down and get her pulled out. Then what I've done is disconnected the upper control arm. It's a bolt here, bolt there. Take them out. You can also pop it loose at the ball joint here. Sometimes they don't come loose that easy. Those top 2 bolts are easy to get out. There's no alignment adjustment up at top, so it's pretty easy to take out. Disconnected the 1 bolt there to get the brake line out. We'll take the bolts out of the caliper. We'll hang it over here, as it has to stay with the vehicle. Back here you have your wheel sensor line. Take that off. And then go down underneath, you've got your emergency brake. Let it focus a little bit. So this little tab here, you should have enough slack. As soon as I get my hand in there, I lose the light. Okay, you should have enough slack. Pull that cable out and work it off the end there. Then there's little tabs on the bottom there. You push those in, pull the cable out, and then you can just get rid of the wire and the cable, just hang it out of the way somewhere. Do this on both sides. Need to take the shock bolts out on the top so it'll come loose. All right, I went ahead and took all the bolts except for the bottom one out there. I'll leave that one in until we're actually ready to lower it down. Up on this side of the torque tube, the passenger side, there's a wiring harness. It's encased in a plastic housing, and it's in clips that are welded on this torque tube. You need to just push it up and out of the clips in like 3 or 4 different places. Now, come to the back. Need to start disconnecting all the wiring from the transmission. But you've got your reverse sensor or your neutral sensor. You've got a deal up on top. Just feel around till you find all the connections and disconnect everything. Okay, another difference from what I'm used to is this ABS controller on the 01s and newer is under the hood. It's in the way up there. But on these, it's in the way back here. So, lines run all the way to the front for your feed lines, and the return for the front. So, what I think I'm going to do is, this thing needs a brake flush anyway. I normally try not to break into the brake system, and you normally don't have to on the later models. But I think what I'm going to do is disconnect this and this, which is your 2 back brakes, and just work the lines out and take caliper and line out completely. I'll just plug the hole here and here until we put it back together, and then we'll just have to bleed the brakes. Like I said, it needs flushed. We'll disconnect this from the cradle and figure out some way to hang it, keep it out of the way as we lower the cradle down. At least that's the plan now. If this was my car, I'd take this off and sell it on eBay and just not have ABS. But not my car. Okay, we took the side brackets off, we took the brake lines out, calipers off, undid the electrical plug. Any of this wiring that's clipped to the cradle needs to be undone. So now we're getting pretty close to lowering it down. We're going to bring, sorry about the lighting, we're going to bring the big jack, put it back under the cradle right here, and then we're going to, once that's supported, we'll take out, there's 4 of these nuts on each corner of the cradle. Take those off. Make sure you got it supported, because that's what holds it up to the car. Do not use an impact on these. Just take them off by hand, because the way they're fastened at the top, if you use an impact, you can break that loose and it'll start spinning. Then you'll have to take your interior part to put a wrench on the top. So just take them off with a wrench gently, and then once we've got that, we can actually start lowering stuff down. Make sure we've got everything disconnected. We'll take that last bolt out of the front, and then we should be able to start sliding stuff back. This ABS pump is definitely going to be in the way, but I think we can move it to the side and kind of work it through this area here. Another thing to point out, on the later model ones, they don't have, like I said, they don't have this in the back, it's up front, but they did run the brake lines over the top. And then they came down to the tray and then ran out, or came down to the cradle, then ran out to the wheels. So what you had to do on them was pop the axles out of the differential. You get in there and you pry and you pop them out. And that will let that line come up through the gap. It's kind of a crappy deal. And I've also got a video showing how to reroute that from up above there straight to the wheels, where you never have to mess with that again, taking the cradle out. So it's in my Corvette playlist. So I've started lowering the cradle down a little bit, got the 4 nuts off. See, there's separation there. You do not want to go too far. There's actually a little diagram on the torque tube that shows you. But basically, you don't want to get, see the top of the differential up there, you don't want to get the top of the differential lower than what your little trunk hump is. So, I don't even think I usually get it that far. So I'm going to keep lowering it down, and then we're going to put a jack underneath the back of the motor, because it will need support. And then we can take off the last bolt on the bell housing and start sliding stuff back. Okay, we zip tied the ABS pump up. Did another final check to see if anything was still disconnected or still connected. We've got this lowered down. We could still go some more, but it's low enough to back everything up a little bit. So I'm gonna set this camera up on the side and start moving stuff back. You can see I put a transmission jack under the engine, and I've got another jack stand there to set the drive shaft tube on. So I'm going to crawl under there and start shoving stuff back until I get the tube, until I get the drive shaft out of the clutch. The last bolt is removed out of here. This is not super heavy because you got a long lever. Start taking it back. See, I can push that up pretty easy. Okay. Make sure everything's disconnected. Feels like that wiring harness is still snagging a little bit. You know one thing I forgot? The clutch line. Got to disconnect that. Supposed to be able to use a little tool like that to wedge in there and disconnect the quick coupler on the clutch line. Well, it's been on there so long, that wasn't working. The plastic piece that pushes on was all jacked up. So I just ended up cutting it with some side cutters. This thing's had clutch problems, you know, sticking to the floor and everything. So it's getting a new slave, master cylinder, everything. So now we're back to sliding it back and dropping it down. Okay, the reason that was hanging up is that wiring harness, besides having the clips, they had a big old wad of some kind of sticky tape holding it to the tube. I don't remember mine being that way. It may have been, but I reached down through the shifter hole inside and I could pull it loose that way. So let's try to go back a little further. We just need to get this far enough to get that snout out of the bell housing. Good way to lose a finger. Okay, that's good there. Look around back some more. I'm going to go out back and lower the back end down. Okay, now we don't have to worry about it wedging up and breaking the firewall. And I put this jack under the cradle this time. It seems like when I did this on mine, I put it underneath the leaf spring. And that looks like it'll make it balance out a little better. But this is working. So now I'm going to go back up front and lower the front of the drive shaft down. Give it another look, make sure everything's disconnected. Yeah, the problem with where I picked this up is that the cradle is swinging on the engine mount, or on the differential mount. I think I'll run a jack up under the front and try to move this forward. Yeah, definitely go under the leaf spring. Not actually on the leaf spring, but on the two mounting perches. Certainly balances everything out better. That's what I've done before. Just been a while and forgot. Alright, I set the front of the drive shaft. See it up there? I set it on a foam pad so it don't get scuffed up. Now we can lower this down as far as possible without it dragging the ground. And now you can basically You just roll it out. There's that rubber pad I was talking about. That was certainly hanging it up. So that is it. It is completely disconnected. I need to move some motorcycles, and I can roll this right straight into the shop, take the torque tube off, take the transmission apart from the differential, get ready to build the trans. So see, it's not that hard. And there's several things here that for the future could be changed to make it a lot easier. One would be to get rid of that damn thing. I'm sorry, I'm just anti-ABS, but I've worked on stuff that was a lot harder to take out than this. That'll be the end of the removal video. Then we can start disassembling stuff. Thanks for watching.